Okay, so let's dive into something super cool. Imagine like rebuilding Notion, but this time AI is like baked right into its DNA from the start. And that's actually exactly what we're going to unpack today. All thanks to a really insightful and rare interview with Simon Last. He's the co-founder of Notion.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about this is Simon rarely gives interviews. So this is a gold mine of insights into his thinking.
You're telling me. And we are going to be dissecting his conversation on the Every YouTube channel. So think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to understanding how AI is changing the game for thinking and working. We're using Notion as our sort of like playground to explore that.
Yeah, and it's not just theoretical. I mean, we're talking about real world applications, like turning Notion into a thinking box that actually automates your knowledge work.
Exactly. You know how companies have that unwritten 95% of knowledge that's just locked away in people's heads? Simon wants to use AI to crack that code.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, imagine AI helping you capture those really crucial insights from every meeting, document, casual conversation you have. It's like having a second brain for your whole company.
Okay, whoa, I'm already like seeing the possibilities here. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break down how this AI magic actually works. Simon talks about these new primitives in software development. They're kind of like building blocks. So what are these new AI primitives and how do they fit into the bigger picture?
So think of it like this. We've always had foundational elements in software, things like databases and user interfaces. Now AI brings its own set of tools to the table. So you have things like foundation models. These are like these superpowered thinking boxes. You feed them information and a task, and they just figure things out. It's like having a tireless research assistant that can analyze and synthesize tons of data in seconds.
So instead of like manually sifting through tons of documents yourself, you could just ask your AI assistant to summarize the key takeaways or find the most relevant information. That would be a total game changer for research and decision making.
Exactly. And then you have these things called embeddings. They're like giving words and concepts a unique fingerprint that captures their meaning. And this allows for super powerful semantic search. It's not just keyword matching anymore. It's about understanding the actual concepts and the relationships between them.
So if I'm searching for information on like productivity hacks, an AI-powered search with embeddings could surface results that go beyond just those specific words and include things like articles or tips on time management, focus techniques, maybe even mindfulness practices,
Hmm.
because it understands that broader concept of productivity.
That's the power of embeddings. But while these new AI primitives are definitely exciting, traditional elements like databases and user interfaces are still super important. But there's a catch. As AI agents start interacting with our data, we need super robust permission models to keep things in check.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Like, imagine an AI agent just going rogue and creating databases without any oversight. Talk about a recipe for chaos.
Exactly. Simon stresses this point a lot. He uses the example of a company's sensitive financial data. And imagine that being accessed and manipulated by an AI without proper authorization. It highlights the need for clear guidelines and controls as we integrate AI into more and more of our systems.
Okay, so we've got these powerful AI primitives, and we need to manage them responsibly. But what about the way we actually interact with these tools? Chat seems like the go-to interface for a lot of AI applications these days. Is that going to stay that way?
I mean, chat is definitely appealing because it's intuitive and conversational, but it has its limits, especially for users who just want solutions. And they don't really want to go on this whole journey of exploration.
You know, that actually reminds me of Notion itself. It's incredibly powerful. There's tons of features, but sometimes that abundance can be kind of overwhelming for some users. It's like having a Swiss Army knife with 100 different blades. Where do you even begin?
Exactly. And Simon actually talks about this in the interview. He mentions how some Notion users are like tool makers. They love to tinker and explore all the possibilities, but others just want to get things done. And the sheer volume of options can be kind of paralyzing.
So finding that balance between power and simplicity, I guess that's key, whether we're talking about Notion or AI tools in general. Okay, so let's play a little thought experiment here. What if Simon went on a retreat and completely reimagined Notion with AI woven into its core? What would that look like?
You know, from the interview, it's clear that Simon envisions AI minimizing human interaction with databases, like picture a CRM.
Hmm.
That automatically updates itself based on your emails and your Slack messages. You wouldn't have to manually log every interaction. The AI would just do it for you.
That actually ties in perfectly with the idea of capturing that elusive 95% of unwritten company knowledge. It's like even if you meticulously document everything, there's always this tribal knowledge that never gets captured.
And that's where AI could be revolutionary. Imagine an AI that can listen in on meetings, analyze documents, even understand the nuances of casual conversations, and then synthesize all that information and make it accessible to everyone in the company.
It would be like having a centralized knowledge repository that's constantly being updated and refined by AI. No more digging through endless email threads or asking colleagues for information that should be readily available.
And think about the potential for onboarding new employees. Instead of overwhelming them with information, you could have an AI-powered system that guides them through the company's knowledge base, answers their questions, and even connects them with the right people.
This is starting to sound a little bit like a sci-fi movie, but it feels like we're on the cusp of something truly transformative here.
Okay, so these AI systems are sounding pretty smart, but what does thinking really mean in the context of AI? Where are the limits of these thinking boxes? Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, from what we've seen. The limitations are more about the current state of AI development than any sort of fundamental barrier. They're constantly evolving and becoming more capable.
There's been a lot of buzz lately about models that can implicitly understand tools like browsers and applications. Simon mentioned Anthropic's Claude as an example. What's your take on that?
I think it's a fascinating development. It really speaks to the potential for AI to interact with the digital world in these incredibly sophisticated ways. But there are trade-offs between explicit and implicit tools.
Can you give me an example of what you mean?
Okay, so think of it like this. You have specialized mental tools for common tasks, like picking up a glass of water. You don't have to consciously think about the physics of grasping and lifting. Your brain has developed a dedicated tool for that. But for novel challenges, you need a slower, more general approach. You have to break the task down into smaller steps and consciously think through each one.
So it's like AI having specialized tools for specific tasks, but also the ability to learn and adapt to new situations.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. Because as AI models become more capable of understanding and interacting with the world, we need to think carefully about the implications.
Yeah, I'm sensing we're about to head into some even deeper waters here. But before we do, let's take a quick pause right here.
Okay, we are back and ready to dive even deeper. We've talked about AI primitives, reimagining Notion, and the evolving capabilities of these so-called thinking boxes.
Yeah.
But let's get practical for a second. What are some of the nuts and bolts of building software with AI?
Well, one of the key takeaways from Simon's interview is that it's super important to understand how these AI models think and really tailor your approach accordingly. Like he uses the example of representing Notion pages as an XML tree. It might seem logical, from a technical perspective, but it turns out LLMs are way more comfortable working with Markdown.
Wait, really? Markdown? That seems almost counterintuitive. Wouldn't a more structured format be better for a machine to understand? You'd think so, right. But it's kind of like trying to explain Shakespeare to someone who only speaks emojis. Markdown might be less precise in terms of capturing all the nuances of a Notion page. But it's way more efficient for the LLM to actually process. It's like speaking the model's language.
So understanding the LLM's language, that's crucial. What other practical tips did Simon share?
He also emphasized the importance of clear output structures. You want to make it as easy as possible for the LLM to understand what you expect from it. Minimize ambiguity. Reduce the cognitive load for both the model and the user.
So keeping things simple and straightforward, any specific examples of how Simon's team has put those principles into practice?
Yeah, he mentioned how their initial approach to representing Notion pages was actually super complex, lots of nesting and intricate rules. But they realized that a simpler representation, even if it meant losing a little bit of detail, was actually more effective when they were working with the LLMs.
It's like we said earlier, right? Finding that balance between power and simplicity is key. But isn't there a risk there? That oversimplifying things could lead to important information being lost or misinterpreted.
It's a valid concern for
Yeah.
sure. But Simon's point is that, it's better to have a controllable level of simplification than to introduce complexities that the LLM might just trip over.
Yeah,
And that leads to those unpredictable errors that we talked about earlier.
makes sense. It's a trade-off between accuracy and clarity. And you're always trying to find that sweet spot.
Exactly. And even with the best design, Errors are inevitable. We're dealing with probabilistic software here. But Simon advocates for a very proactive approach to error handling.
Okay, but how do you handle errors when you don't even know what kinds of errors are possible?
I mean, that's the challenge, right? He suggests trying to design the system in a way that makes certain types of errors impossible. So it could be like
Yeah.
tweaking the prompts that you give the LLM,
Yeah.
or just avoiding using AI in situations where
Sure.
those errors are likely to pop up.
So it's like anticipating those potential pitfalls and designing around them. But what about when that's not feasible? What do you do then?
Then it's all about having a really robust feedback loop. You need to constantly be identifying, labeling, and addressing those errors as they arise.
So it's kind of a never-ending game of whack-a-mole.
In a way, yeah. Simon even talked about how they're still discovering new types of errors.
Yeah.
Even after they've done tons of testing, it's this ongoing process of refinement and improvement.
Speaking of testing, he mentioned those deterministic and model-graded evils. Can you break those down for me a little bit more?
Sure. So deterministic evils are pretty straightforward. It's like grading a multiple choice test. You have a clear set of answers,
Right.
and you can measure
Yeah.
pretty easily how well the system performs. But with AI, things aren't always that black and white. And that's where these model-graded evils come in. You're essentially using another AI model to judge the output of the first one.
It's like AI inception, evaluating AI with AI. But wouldn't that introduce a whole other layer of complexity?
Absolutely. And Simon pointed out that, you need to be really confident in the evaluating model itself. It's like having a student grade their own homework. You need to know that they're being objective and accurate.
So evaluating this squishy software, it really is a whole new ballgame.
It is. And the key, as Simon emphasized, is to be flexible and iterative.
Yeah.
You can't get too bogged down in formal evaluations early on in a project. It's more about getting a feel for how the system is performing, seeing what works and what doesn't.
So a lot more experimentation and intuition in those early stages.
Right. But as you move closer to release, the evaluation becomes much more rigorous. You're trying to anticipate every possible edge case, every potential pitfall.
It's fascinating how much this whole process mirrors the creative process in general. You start with exploration and intuition, and then you refine and polish as you go.
It's true. And speaking of creativity, I'm really curious to dig into Simon's thoughts on the future of AI, specifically AGI.
Yeah, he mentioned being AGI pilled, which sounds pretty hardcore. Does he really believe that artificial general intelligence is achievable in the near future?
He seems pretty convinced, and not just in some distant sci-fi future. He thinks it could happen within the next decade, even without any major breakthroughs. He points to the incredible progress that we've already seen, and the fact that AI research itself is being automated.
But as we discussed earlier, the definition of AGI keeps shifting. It's like a moving target. Isn't that a little bit of a problem?
It definitely makes things tricky. Simon acknowledges that. He says we've seen the bar for AGI being raised repeatedly as AI capabilities continue to advance.
So how can you confidently predict that something's going to happen when the goalposts keep moving?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's what makes this whole feel so exciting. We're in completely uncharted territory, and the future is anything but certain.
So if we can't predict the future with any real accuracy, what can we do to prepare for it?
Well, Simon's advice is to be adaptable and open to change. And I think that's good advice in general. He also stresses the need to be thoughtful about the implications of AI and to make sure that its development aligns with our values and our goals as humans.
That brings us back to the question of what role human intuition and creativity will play in a world where AI excels at these things.
Yeah, it's a question that Simon has clearly grappled with himself. He doesn't believe in assigning special value to any particular human capability.
So it's not about trying to outthink AI or outcreate AI in areas where it might surpass us.
Exactly. He focuses on the bigger picture. It's about defining our goals as humans, figuring out what we want to achieve, and then using AI as a tool to help us get there.
So it's about steering the ship, not just building a bigger engine.
Exactly. And that's where human intuition and creativity, I think, become even more important. We need to be able to envision those possibilities, articulate our values, and guide AI development in a direction that actually benefits humanity.
It's a powerful message, especially for those who might be feeling a little anxious about the future of AI.
I agree. And it's a reminder that we still have a crucial role to play. Even as AI becomes more and more sophisticated, it's not about being replaced by AI. It's about finding new ways to collaborate and co-create with it.
Simon mentioned the importance of building what you want, using your own needs and desires as a starting point for innovation. What are some of the things he's personally working on?
He's really focused on automating those like tedious everyday tasks that we all dread. Things like keeping documentation up to date, eliminating manual data entry, generating insightful summaries from mountains of information. It's about using AI to free us up so we can focus on the things that really matter.
Yeah, that's something I think we can all relate to. I've been experimenting with AI-powered meeting summaries myself lately, and it's been a total game changer for me.
It's so cool to see how AI is being used in these practical ways.
Hmm.
And Simon sees the AI field as incredibly open and full of possibilities. It's about that sense of wonder and exploration, the joy of trying new ideas and seeing them come to life.
It's that entrepreneurial spirit that drives so much innovation.
Yeah.
So after all this talk about AI, what concrete takeaways do you think Simon would want us to walk away with?
I think he'd emphasize that we're at a really pivotal moment. The tools and the techniques are already here. It's up to us to use them wisely, to shape AI in a way that benefits all of humanity.
So it's not just about building AI, it's about building AI with intention, with a clear understanding of its potential and its limitations.
Absolutely. And it's about remembering that at the end of the day, AI is a tool,
Yeah,
and it's up to us to decide how we use it and what kind of future we want to create with it.
well said. And with that, I think we're ready to wrap up this deep dive. It's been an incredible journey, exploring Simon's insights and his vision for the future of AI.
Yeah, it has. And a big thank you to everyone for listening in. We hope you found this exploration as thought-provoking as we did.
It really feels like we're standing at the edge of something massive, right?
It does, doesn't it? This whole conversation has been like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Possibilities and challenges all mixed together.
Exactly. And I think the key takeaway for me is that we have agency in all of this. We're not passive passengers on some AI-powered roller coaster. We actually have the power to shape the direction of this whole technology, to guide its development and application.
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. It's easy to get swept up in all the hype or the fear, but at the end of the day, we have choices to make.
So how do we make sure we're making the right choices? How do we actually steer AI towards a future that benefits everyone?
Well, I think Simon's philosophy of like building what you want is a really great place to start. It's about identifying your own needs and desires as a human, and then using AI as a tool to help address those challenges.
So it's not just about blindly adopting whatever new AI tool comes along. It's about being really intentional, understanding how AI can specifically enhance your life or your work.
Exactly. And I think that intentionality needs to extend beyond just like our individual use of AI.
Hmm.
We need to have a much broader conversation as a society about our values, our goals, and how we actually want AI to fit into the world that we're creating.
Yeah, that's a big conversation. And it feels like it's just beginning, but I think platforms like Notion, where people are already using AI to organize their thoughts and collaborate, they could actually play a role in shaping that conversation.
I agree. Notion could become like a hub for exploring the possibilities of AI, sharing ideas, experimenting with new ways of working and thinking.
And who knows, maybe that's where the next generation of AI-powered tools will actually emerge from.
Yeah.
Tools that are not only powerful, but also aligned with our values and our aspirations.
Yeah, it's an exciting prospect. It's a reminder that we're still really in the early days of this whole journey. There's so much more to discover, so much more to create.
And so many more questions to ask, like the one we posed earlier. If AI can become incredibly creative and intuitive, what role will human intuition and creativity actually play in shaping its development and application?
That's the question that keeps me up at night. And I don't think there's like a simple answer to that. But I do believe that by embracing curiosity, by engaging in thoughtful dialogue, and by experimenting with new possibilities, we can actually navigate this uncharted territory together.
And maybe, just maybe, we can emerge on the other side with an even richer understanding of what it actually means to be human in an age of increasingly powerful AI.
I'm optimistic. I think we're up to the challenge.
Well, on that hopeful note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. It's been an incredible journey exploring Simon's insights and his vision for the future of AI.
Yeah, it really has. And a huge thank you to everyone for listening in. We hope you found this exploration as thought-provoking as we did.
And remember, this conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring the world of AI, to experiment with new tools, and to share your own thoughts and discoveries with us.
Absolutely. Until next time, happy diving.